This is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime with successful solutions and systems to create your ideal second half. We help you unlock your potential using your valuable skills, resources, and talents to create your ideal work and lifestyle at halftime. Well, it is great to be here with you today at this episode with a really very impactful subject, the two most important speeches I ever gave. And joining me today is Greg, my husband. Say hello to everybody.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
So this is a little bit different episode, but both Greg and I have had the privilege in the past years of doing the eulogies for both of our parents, our mother and our father. So I thought it would be an interesting, because this is all about life at halftime, to approach this subject and not only how to craft a eulogy, but how to present it and what some of the most important, meaningful parts were of that to us. So we're going to just start out with maybe ways we can document a life. The first one was your father, correct, that you did?
Yep.
And what were some of the unique things that you were able to do in that one that kind of stood out?
Well, I think it's important to start by remembering that maybe two things. One, as the adult child, you're going to be able to bring the people attending to a place of remembrance in a far better way than any pastor or other official could possibly do, because you typically knew a lot of them. And second, remember that you're not only there to honor your loved one, but you're also there to help others celebrate their memory. So if you start the interview process by thinking, who added to their story? As eulogy is a lot of telling the story of somebody's life.
Right.
And the place to start is who is going to be at the memorial service and added to the story of their life, and can I include them in that story of celebration of somebody's life? And then once you do that, you get a list of 5 to 8 friends or siblings that are still alive, and you just interview them and ask them how they came to know your mom or your dad. Is there any important stories, funny stories, stories of the kids growing up together? You got to help them sometimes jog their memory. But a lot of times, once you jog their memory, they just start talking.
Yeah, it was just such a neat time, I remember, of just all of those memories. And you included a couple extra things. And I kind of went about it a little bit different way, is I had note cards from the past.
That's right. Deb started kind of anticipating her parents aging, so she actually started collecting a stack of index cards. Every time her mom or dad told a story, she'd quickly write them down, and she started literally like 7 years in advance. Right. So she had these, and a lot of times she'd forgotten what she had written down.
I totally forgot. I was reading some of them thinking, oh, this is good. Whoa, I forgot about this, the little stories. And I was so glad, because usually in my purse, I will keep extra index cards just because I'm a writer as well. And I'm writing down these thoughts because I know if I don't write it down, the thought will be gone. It just will. So that I started doing and just gathered them. And it was like, wow, this is such rich stuff that I have for these memories. And there were some really funny stories that I really recalled recounting. So I think a couple points that you did make that were so great were making sure that we include people that are there. That's a great point of just including them in the memories so they can create those memories and remember. They may not totally remember some of those things, so you are recalling things for them.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
including
If
them.
you got stories from your parents directly that included people who are going to be at the memorial service, that's even better.
Yes.
Because then they're surprised.
Yes.
Most of mine, I had to go find their surviving friends and family and get the stories firsthand. But it'd be even better, like in your case where you were collecting stories as you went. If you had collected stories of them and they didn't even know that anybody remembered that would be fun to include.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, because my father went first, and then a year later, literally a year later, my mom went, and I didn't think I was going to have as many stories from my mom, because with my father, he was a fire captain, and I had newspaper articles of some of the main fires that he had been on, and I had all these stories, and it was so hard to cut that down. I mean, we had the local firemen were all there with the fire trucks and everything. It was a big deal. So it was really hard to cut that one down. And for my mom, I was thinking, okay, I don't want it to, I don't want it to be quite this long. But it was still very full. I was surprised at the little extra stories I found about her that I had written down, and again, that I had forgotten about. So, but just something special, and was able to include people that were in her life as well, but especially in my father's life, with his brother and some of the jokes they made on each other and all of that. I was able to include some of those family stories, and I knew the firemen were coming. So I put in, because that was a big deal that they showed up with all of that. They don't always do that. And I put in that story, and I could just see them. They were in the back, and they were riveted with that story. So that was really fun to include that in there. Now, you also included in some unique music, especially with your dad's.
Yeah, my dad was kind of hard to grow up with. He was an ex-Marine, and part of doing his eulogy was to help my brother relive our childhood memories and kind of include him into why certain things in our life are still important today. So one of the things that was kind of uniquely special to my dad, which was kind of surprising, was that he was really tender around Christmas. Mm. So he was a really rough ex-Marine kind of guy, 11 months out of the year. But then come Christmas, our house was full of Christmas music, and just the whole spirit of the household, changed. There was a big deal of getting the fresh Christmas tree and putting it up, and everybody getting presents, and the grandparents including it. So, and two, most of his life he wasn't a believer in the Lord, and so singing the Christmas carols was an interesting, thing in our household. So we stopped in the middle of the service and at one time and sang some Christmas carols. And then I went on and spoke some more. And then another thing that was important that my brother had totally forgotten about was my dad really liked early 60s folk music, and both my mom and dad liked a lot of the Broadway musicals. Mm-hmm. And so we stopped and put up some of the slideshow of those album covers and played just a little bit of all that. And so it helped everybody there kind of enter into our family memory. And it also was a special moment for my brother as he got to relive kind of his childhood and why music was important to us.
Yeah, that was really neat. And actually, because I do music and I was in music, you had me put that little medley together where one of our sons, David, and we actually did the medley together of Oklahoma and some of those other songs.
Broadway tunes.
Yes, the Broadway tunes, and one of them that we had no idea what was, but we learned it. But it went back to some of the favorites of your dad's, and it actually was very meaningful to me to have that memory of being a part of the service that way, because it was a part of my father-in-law, that service. So there.
Yeah, and naturally, all that music was deeply personal to friends that were their age. It was music of their lives too. So that was a meaningful moment.
Yeah, and with my parents, my father and my parents loved the hymns. I didn't grow up with much of that, even though I've done so much of that in my adult life.
You mean Broadway music?
Broadway music,
right.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the musicals in high school, but I just didn't grow up like your parents were always playing that. Mm-hmm. My parents were playing Mantovani strings, gospel, and the gospel quartets, and the classics.
Right.
So it was a little bit different.
But that was the appropriate music for your mom and dad's eulogies.
Very, very appropriate. And one of my nieces sang Amazing Grace. That was one of the last songs I was able to even sing for my father. So it was so meaningful. And I'm really glad I did not have to sing that in my parents, because it would have been very difficult. I did the eulogy, but it would have been very difficult to do that because of just some of those memories for me. But yes, it's all part of finding those special memories, because that's what people carry out of a service and carry out. It's a celebration. We want to make it a celebration of a life. So I think that's we want to honor them. Boy, I got something in my throat here. We want to honor them, but we also want to just create a time of remembrance and celebrating.
Yeah, honoring's important. Some people's life is easier to honor than other people's life. But at a memorial service, there's really no reason to, feel like you got to be totally honest with all of their foibles and flaws. Yeah, everybody knows that families are full of those.
Yes.
A memorial service is a time really to celebrate what somebody added to your life, and as somebody who's giving the eulogy, you're not only trying to celebrate their life yourself, but you're trying to help everybody in attendance through their memories celebrate lives. So the more that you can connect with the memories that they had of your mother or father, or if you're doing a eulogy for a friend, the more you can help the audience connect with memories that they had with their friend, together, the more effective the celebration is going to be.
Right. I really love focusing on that celebration. And in, some services or some of the programs, people just have their own you get speakers up there and they have their own little agendas. And I've done a lot of those as a musician, and, kind of carrying on and on and on. And some of that's appropriate because of traditions and all of that and whatever background they come from. But yet focusing on really that life and the joy that there was. And I liked your point of really honoring them, that there's no reason to bring up like dirt.
Right.
And you really have to guide that, when you give people a chance to say things and to be there and to share their memories. That's a bigger part, of the whole service. We're just talking mainly about the eulogy, but to me, doing a eulogy for both parents, it was such an honor for me, because I got beyond because I'm the oldest grandchild on that side, oldest child that was in my family. And to be able to do that I felt like such a privilege. And how did you feel after doing both of your parents? Because your father went like 5 years before your mom.
Yeah. My dad's, when I finished, I felt like it was the best presentation I'd ever given in my life. And I'd spoken thousands of times. And It was in terms of substance, in terms of delivery, and in terms of effect, the best speech I ever gave. And part of it was my dad. I could have focused on all of his negatives, and you got to be careful not in a memorial service to make somebody better than they were, because everybody there knew him. So you better be honest. But at the same time, there is no reason to denigrate somebody who's passed. There's things that people contribute to our lives, and those are the things to celebrate. And if they didn't contribute anything, it's doubtful anybody would be at the memorial service. So, maintaining that balance was really good for me, and I felt like I pulled it off really well. And I was fortunate.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. Something else that I did after doing the eulogy was I sent my actual eulogy script to, all the grandkids. So they had a record of, some of the research. I had to do some research.
Yeah, you did. Right.
Kind of digging through some of the old articles and things I had saved through the years. And my father's father, my grandfather, was, a mayor of a small town, and then they were in leadership. All of them were in public service. So I was able to save some of those articles and do some of that. But I put a lot of those little details into the eulogy. So I felt like it was a very good record then of what my father's life was like. And I did the same sort of, my mom didn't have that same sort of background, but there were a lot of other little things that I found that I was able to put in there of, coming from a dozen kids and from, all of that sort of background in there. So the grandkids have a little something to walk away with for the future.
Yeah, I think that's important too, because for some reason in our society, when somebody passes, we dutifully go to the memorial service and then quickly run to lunch. And, by 6 o'clock at night, the person who's passed is basically forgotten.
Yeah.
And they become a fleeting memory really quick. And one of the things about, you saving those documents is it's not against the rules for us to talk about our parents with our kids. Our kids are all in their 30s now. And
you're making us seem like really old now, but we are.
but by continue to talk about the contribution our parents had to our lives, we not only honor them, but we also cement our kids' lives in a permanent record.
Right.
They're the extension of something that's gone on for a couple of hundred years. So I think that's important, to know that you have a place in life and in history.
Yes, I love that, and also I tried to craft some of the memories that I had, or some of the details, into a story. So it was like almost like a story form. So it was chronological, of course, but recreating that story of a life, because I know I am captivated, with a story. When I start reading a Once Upon a Time, and I didn't start my parents out with Once Upon a Time,
right.
but it was weaving these little stories together, and with points in between that, my dad was a dad of character, and my mom was so industrious and so talented, and she would always discount that talent. I was able to put that between these little stories of her having, a pet pig and, all of those little things that she grew up with and grew up with nothing, actually nothing. And she had to pay, turn her paycheck over to her mom and she finally was able to sew a suit. She got some material and she learned how to sew kind of on her own. So those little stories that you put in there really create this more of even a legacy that we can honor our parents with. And
a eulogy is basically a chronological retelling of somebody's life, highlighting some of the memories and some of the people that were important in each phase of that chronology. And I know in my dad's, I started out with, he was the oldest and his two brothers were still alive and in the audience. And so I included, just how when they were the three knuckleheads running around Huntington Park, how they'd ride their bikes to here and there. And the two oldest, had a paper route. They'd go down to the corner and sell papers and, just recalling those memories. And then as my dad finished high school and went into the Marine Corps, I told the story of how on the first day, not knowing anybody, and I embellish a little bit, not knowing anybody and being a little bit scared of what's going to happen and, how tough am I going to be? How many fights am I going to get into? He meets these two other, new Marines, and they all become fast friends. And to me, they became my adopted Uncle Tom and Uncle Monty. And because we spent the rest of our lives together. And so, some of the kids who were my age were at the memorial service. So having their dads included in the story, meant a lot to them. So
yeah, that is a really, and again, it comes back to that story.
Right.
Because, I've been a musician for so many years, and I really do enjoy doing memorial, like the celebrations. It's really meaningful to see, kind of hear about these lives. But there are so many too, such and such was born this day to this day, and then just fact after fact after fact. Well, I just, when you create those little stories, and it's not that hard to do, it just creates this memory, a living memory almost of a life.
Yeah, some people seem like they want to suddenly pontificate on the philosophy of life and treasuring every moment, and droning on, and it ends up being all about them.
Yes.
Instead of about the person. Now, if you happen to be extremely profound on the meaning of life and can pull that off, then absolutely go for it. But for most of us, mere humans, one sentence on the fact that, my parents meant the world to me because in reality, they took, a 20-year pause in their life to make sure that I turned out right.
Yeah.
If you don't say anything more than that, that was probably good enough.
Yeah, that's and it's a lot to be thankful for. I
think
we both won the lottery with our parents.
Right.
How they, how we were raised. So anyway, well, this was just. I really wanted to do this because lately this is a big part of many people's lives. They're either now caring for parents that are needing care, and they're sandwiched in between. They've still got adult kids, and now they're caring for their parents, and they're still working, and it's so crazy. But soon you will be ushering your parents into, their next stage, as I say. They're on the train, and we are all on that train. So we were celebrating their life. My dad knew where he was going, but he loved living.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder. If your parents are still alive, start celebrating them now.
Yes.
Don't wait to have to wrap all this up in a week before you do the memorial service.
Right, definitely. So, I have a little free download that'll be with you today. But also, I'm just going to kind of sum up some of our main points. Was that the stories are really wonderful. So start collecting them now. Don't put this off thinking, we got plenty of time. Write them down somewhere. Because believe it or not, those things you forget. I have a pretty good memory. Pretty sharp. I remember a lot of things. And I still, if I go back to playing something I haven't played for years on the piano, I can still get through those concertos. I remember a lot of it. It just stays with me because of the muscle memory. But I will guarantee these stories do not always stay with you. So make sure you write those down. And it's okay to do music that was meaningful to them. It doesn't need to be hymns. It can be Oklahoma. It can be folk songs. It can be almost anything. I've done just a lot of standards. Anything. Kind of one of the weirdest ones I did, I think. No, that was for a wedding. Oh, that's a different subject. I did the theme from Sting. Anyway, da 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 da. Yeah, that was kind of weird. Anyway. Don't know if that marriage is still together or not. But always to honor the reason that we're there, so you just really want to honor. Sometimes just put away some of those, hard feelings or something, just to make sure you can focus on honoring and giving everyone else a chance to do that. You can set the tone, especially if you were doing the eulogy or even directing the eulogy, having somebody else do it. Because it is a chronological, record of a life, and making it all about the person and not, this is not about me or you or us. This is all about honoring that person who is now not with us.
And helping the people who are there enter into the memory.
Yeah, that's excellent. So our little free download today is goalsforyourlife.com/eulogy. And in that is just a little guide to get you through. If you are listening to this thinking, oh my goodness, this is ahead, I need some sort of guide like that. At least I'll put some of these points down for you. Again, that's goalsforyourlife.com/eulogy. And next week, make sure you are here because I'm talking about dream a little dream. Define your dream job and your schedule. Dream a little dream of me. Okay, so there's a lot of songs about that, but I wanted to focus on what our dreams are and how we can define those of where we really want to be. If we don't define where we want to be, we may never get there. So I want to be able to spend a little time doing that as we are in this new year. So thanks again for joining us today. And thank you, Greg, for joining me. And Deborah Johnson with goalsforyourlife.com and womenatalftime.com. And we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us on Women at Halftime. Visit goalsforyourlife.com and womenatalftime.com for resources, free downloads, and programs that will help you create successful solutions and systems for your ideal second half. Send us your questions to deb@womenatalftime.com. That's Deb, D-E-B, @womenatalftime.com. So until next time, this is Deborah Johnson for Women at Halftime.